Monster Hunter Wilds comes out today, and it's a lot of people's game of the year already. And personally, I haven't touched the game, but I know that it's about gigantic monsters, and we do a lot of Godzilla, so hey, what the heck. Let's put up the most powerful dragon in the verse, being Fatalis, up against Godzilla, the king of the monsters. But which version of the king? Well, seeing as how the topic of the day is video games, let's talk about the most prolific version of the king in that medium, being the Godzilla from the Pipeworks trilogy that started all the way from Destroy All Monsters and capped off in Godzilla Unleashed. Also, Pipeworks, if you're watching, please remaster those games, please. But yeah, that's the topic of today's video. We've got the video game Godzilla versus the big video game monster. I think it kind of sells itself, and I don't think I need to explain the hype around this. So, get your popcorn, place your bets, and tell me who you think would win in a fight. Before I just tell you who actually wins. And both parties are granted a lot stronger than I initially assumed. So, it's gonna be a good one. So, if that sounds interesting to you, I recommend you guys subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and I'm thinking that at this pace, we can probably more or less hit it by the end of the year. So if this sounds interesting to you, then just consider it. We post tons of videos, shorts, and we even stream now. In fact, I'm going to be streaming the new Monster Hunter in a couple hours, so if you want to talk to me about Monster Hunter in power scaling format, then that's a place where you're going to be able to do it. And hey, if you're old here, thanks for the continued support. And be sure to like and comment on the video. I don't really need to explain the specifics, but it helps. So with the shameless shilling out the way, and I do mean shameless, subscribe. Let's head into the matchup that you clicked the video to see. Fatalis is one of the strongest dragons in the Monster Hunter series, and depending on who you ask, he might just be the strongest. So before we get into his scaling, let's talk about some of the monsters that he should just logically upscale to get an estimate for his true power. Fatalis as a black dragon should upscale beasts which consistently have feats in the country to moon level ranges of AP. So starting with the lower ends to this estimate, we have beasts that encompass entire islands and flatten entire mountains just by going on morning strolls, like unironically. We also have monsters that are confirmed to be able to shake the planet with their mere movements, and we have others that can cover the planet in fire, with the description of the feat likening the motion to just creating a star from the planet. Now obviously this is hyperbolic, but at lowest estimation, this should still mean that this monster is able to create a global fire that encompasses the planet as we can see it. So those are feats that should get in the multi-continental range, to really no one's surprise. We also have beasts like Lao Shanglong, who with their every scale is confirmed to be as durable as a flying wyvern's entire shell. Keep in mind these guys aren't too impressive inverse or crossverse, but just due to the ridiculous amount of scales that this main dragon would have, and it's been founded that as a baseline, Lao Shanglong would have an entire base durability that gets around to multi-continental plus. As wyverns really scale to Devil Joes, and those guys apparently have mountain level feats. So just taking that tens of thousands of times, it just gets that high. It's pretty close to just baseline moon level, so I don't see the issue in giving this dragon this, AP as a gauge. This scaling is particularly important because his entire narrative is that he's running away from Fatalis. So that should go to show you how powerful this dragon is. He's got people who are more than likely moon level just cucking to him. None of this is even really his scaling. It's just going over beasts he's just superior to. So let's get into the dragon scaling chain, as a lot of people have their doubts when it comes to scaling Fatalis. And I'm gonna just say it. This guy is consistently in those planetary ranges. For starters, he has too many lore implications to count that would seem to imply that he's a planet destroyer. It's stated in a poem, guidebooks for Iceborne. Variants of Fatalis are confirmed to be world enders in their theme song that plays while in combat with them. It's a sentiment so out there and just numerous that the official Welcome to Monster Hunter guide that was made to promote Wilds calls Fatalis a threat that put the world at stake. And yeah, I know a lot of these statements are kind of broad, but they have calculations and feats that support Fatalis being at least planetary. And to get into that, we're gonna have to talk about White Fatalis, who's a variant of the dragon that, while albeit yes is stronger than the subject of today's video, he isn't like so much stronger that the feats we're gonna talk about shouldn't be used to scale the actual normal Fatalis, as you'll see. Well, anyways, White Fatalis is able to casually generate an eclipse during the duration of his boss fight. This would easily be a planetary to just large planetary feat depending on how fast you think this beast was able to cause this phenomenon, and seeing as how he kept it during the entirety of the encounter, which can get up to 30 minutes, and just stacking that on top of the initial value. And it's been found that White Fatalis can passively generate energy in the small star level ranges while combating the player and getting weaker throughout the course of the fight. There's also a higher end that stems from the fact that the dragons, according to myth, are stated to have created the moon from a single dragon scale, which gets up to small star level plus. And yes, it's a myth in verse, but let's not ignore the fact that huge chunks of the entire Monster Hunter narrative revolve around the fact that things that are considered myths are actually just reality. Like, we have guidebooks that imply this sentiment to be the case, and may I remind you guys that Fatalis as just a being was thought to have been a myth. So I mean, I think granting the dragons this end is fair enough. So the casual small star end is insane because White Fatalis is stated to have unrivaled power per one of its scales. So just taking that value and calc stacking it based on the amount of scales that White Fatalis would be made up of, and it's been founded that this guy would have large star level to even solar system durability as a baseline. And yeah, like I said, this guy is stronger than the normal Fatalis, but we talked about feats that were super duper casual. Like, obviously he's stronger than the normal Fatalis, but yeah, you're gonna argue that a single one of his scales would one-shot Fatalis? Or are we gonna sit here and pretend that he doesn't scale to White Fatalis casually performing a small star level feat while just getting weaker during combat? Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, White Fatalis would beat Fatalis, but I'm not gonna sit here and argue that he doesn't scale to him at all. Like, that's super casual stuff. You don't get more casual than a single scale. But yeah, I remember a lot of you guys saying that this guy doesn't break planetary. But not only have I shown that he actually does, he gets all the way up to solar system level via being relative to his white variant. So how about his speed? And it's just as impressive, to be honest. At a low end, the hunters that Fatalis boxes with are capable of dodging lightning, which would grant pretty much everyone relevant in the verse massively hypersonic combat speed and reaction times. But moving on to like much more impressive ends, obviously we have White Fatalis being able to fly from the moon and back, which replaces speed in the sub-relativistic plus ranges. But I'm not going to waste any more of you guys' time and just head into the big boy stuff, as we have characters which can summon meteors that come from the chunks of stars. At the lowest of ends, and assuming that these chunks come from like the sun, and examining how fast they come to Earth and in gameplay time, and that would mean that these characters can conjure up, react, and throw attacks that exceed the speed of light over 45 times over. But if you want to wank their speed for whatever reason, there's a calculation that assumes that these meteors come from chunks of supernovas, and that would boost up the speed dramatically. As then we'd find ourselves with dragons which can conjure up constructs that exceed the speed of light hundreds of millions of times over. It just gets crazy. So with that being said, our boy Fatalis at a low end would be in those planetary ranges, but he'd more than likely fall anywhere between large star to just baseline solar system level. And he would have speed that is faster than the speed of light by anywhere between dozens of times to millions of times. It can vary drastically is my point. But one thing that doesn't vary drastically is BCE's collectibles, as these guys are super consistent when it comes to delivering kaiju merchandise in efficient manners with pretty good pricing on top of that. These guys have been a repeat sponsor on the channel, and they were kind enough to ship out to me the Baragon movie Monster Series figure. This guy is a very obscure kaiju from the mid-60s Showa era, and he kind of would fit right in the Pipeworks games. This guy was delivered to me in a very timely format, and he's incredible. The detailing, the sculpting, and it fits right in scale with some of my other Showa movie Monster Series figures. So this guy's an excellent purchase. And if you'd be interested in getting him, as well as a whole catalog of kaiju merchandise that varies from Gamera, Godzilla, and even various anime kaiju, then this is the place to get your stuff. The first link in the description should lead you right to the website, and if you use code Goji-Chronic 5, then that will save you 5% off your next purchase. Thank you, BC East, for sponsoring today's video. And with that being said, let's head right back onto the Pipeworks Godzilla scaling chain. Pipeworks Godzilla is one of the fandom's most beloved versions of the character, and this is partly due to him starring in the most unanimously praised games to ever bless the Godzilla IP, being the set of games that make up the Pipeworks trilogy, being Destroy All Monsters, Save the Earth, and Godzilla Unleashed, as well as Godzilla Double Smash, because according to one of the game's directors, despite it being released and marketed as an Unleash-esque game on the DS, it's actually an alternate timeline retelling the events of Godzilla Save the Earth. So, any feats and scaling from that game should still be applicable to the main Pipeworks titans and their counterparts. And I'm also happy to talk about the game since, fun fact, it was the first game that I ever beat. Oh, and Godzilla Dominion isn't canon to anything, unfortunately, so I won't be talking about the feats from that game. But seeing as how we do have 4 titles to talk about, we should be good anyways. So with this continuity established, how does our boy scale? Starting with his attack potency, during the events of Godzilla Double Smash, he was able to defeat the Sphinx, a character who was shown to be powered by a source of energy so potent that it was able to create massive craters on the planet Earth, which is a feat that would get anywhere between multi-continental to moon level. One could support this notion with an official guidebook statement confirming that these guys' battles are destructive enough to split the planet itself. Like, yeah, you could argue this is a hyperbolic statement, but seeing as how it's something that actually happens that Godzilla pretty much scales to, then I mean, it's just some consistency at that point, and you could argue it to potentially mean that this version of the King of Monsters is casually planetary. But to be honest, that's still a lowball, as Pipeworks Godzilla at this particular moment in time is consistently in the stellar ranges of AP, with most of this being due to the fact his main op being Space Godzilla is just Space Godzilla, which comes with all the semantics of that. Anyone who's seen any of my Heisei videos should know as a baseline, this guy was created in a black hole. But if that's not enough for you, he's pretty much very consistently shown to be able to create both black and white holes. This is something that's shown in both versions of Save the Earth. It's confirmed that this is exactly what he's doing by the people who made the game, and I mean, it's just pretty blatant. What is this? A black hole. We have low-end calculations getting these phenomenon in the large star level ranges, but seeing as how these black holes dwarf planets and are shown to be on comparable sizes as like gas giants, then you really shouldn't be surprised that solar system level is an end of power that exists for the Pipeworks Godzilla continuity, with Godzilla himself scaling to the guy who makes said black holes. Doesn't only scale to him, he just beats him up. It's probably the most blatant during the end cutscene of Godzilla Save the Earth, which ends with Space Godzilla getting sucked up into one of the black holes he created, and then you have Godzilla just standing there, no selling gets pulled. So yeah, this King of the Monsters is unironically solar system level very consistently, and on top of that, he has a Rage Boost power up, which gives him a 120% increase in damage. So you just take the highest end calc for the solar system level stuff, and then multiply that by 2.4, and that should serve as a mere baseline for this version of Godzilla. So with his attack potency covered, let's move on to speed, because it's equally as impressive. Godzilla is really consistently anywhere between FTL to just MFTL plus, as he's capable of reacting to and tagging spaceships that are able to traverse galaxies at a time frame of like 2 years. Seeing as how galaxies are ridiculously far apart, in order to traverse this space in this time frame, these ships would have had to have been traveling at speeds at a low end relative to tens of thousands of times faster than the speed of light, but at a high end they could be traveling almost a couple 100,000 times the speed of light. So either way, that's MFTL plus. He's able to also fight the alien kaiju that are with this armada, such as Orga and King Ghidorah, as well as Gigan. And he can also fight on par with Mogira, a character who can also fly at these interstellar speeds. It's remarkably consistent that Godzilla just is able to react and travel at this pace, as even as far as like the concept art for the game shows that he's just literally dodging these alien spacecraft. And on top of that, Godzilla has power-ups that can literally boost his speed for temporary bursts of time. So Godzilla is ridiculously powerful and ridiculously fast, and on top of that, Godzilla has a whole nother form, being its critical mass state, which boosts both of the previously mentioned stats, and it even makes him much bigger as well, dwarfing kaiju that were shown to be at a relative stature to his base. So with that being said, it's easy to see why he's earned his title as the King of the Monsters. So between both of our combatants, who would win a fight? And well, I got Godzilla. As you guys can see, his large star to solar system level metas are much more consistent and concrete, as opposed to Fatalis, who gets that high via scaling relative to White Fatalis. Now granted, he has those metas, but it involved downscaling him from a bit. And even then, it was lower into solar system level than Godzilla was. To be honest, the only real advantage that Fatalis would have in this matchup is his higher end speed metrics, if you grant him those metrics to begin with. In my opinion, getting his speed that high kind of comes from appeal to reality, as it just says that, these materials are like too hard to come from the sun, right? So he assumed that it came from the closest supernova, when we don't really know anything about the Monster Hunter grander cosmology. Maybe there's supernovas that are much closer than the ones that are closer to our IRL Earth. It kind of just comes from assuming, in my opinion. I think using the lower end calc as a baseline is a lot more safer and consistent than just asserting their millions of times faster than the speed of light. And if we're going to keep it consistent speed end versus consistent speed end, Godzilla's got him beat as well. So there goes Fatalis' only real advantage in this matchup. So in conclusion, if I were to place my bets on this fight, I got Pipeworks Godzilla. He's a lot stronger and consistently around the same speed tier, if I'm being generous to Fatalis. And this guy is more than a little experienced when it comes to fighting dragons, so he got this. So what did you guys think of this matchup? Did I wank Pipeworks Godzilla, or did I lowball Fatalis? Were you surprised by any of these contenders, AP metrics? I know I was. And I hope you guys were as well. As a reminder, I'm going to be playing Monster Hunter Wilds in a couple of hours, so if you want to say hi to me in my stream, talking to me about this video, then that's the best place to do it. We've been pretty consistent on the streaming grind, and it's been really fun to get to know some of you guys. But if you're not interested in that, that's alright, because as always, I'll see you guys next week with a new video. But until then, stay big G fans.